Wheels are already in motion to replace Justice Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. The president says he will name his appointee by the end of the week. And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is laying the groundwork for what would be a record-breaking speed-wise confirmation. President Trump says that he will nominate a woman, and a judge with Georgia ties is among his top two reported contenders. Judge Barbara Lagoa serves on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit based in Atlanta. She was the first Hispanic woman to be appointed as a justice of the Supreme Court of Florida. She worked on the Elian Gonzalez case pro bono before that. The other woman considered a top contender is federal judge Amy Coney Barrett. Once he makes his choice, President Trump is urging Senate Republicans to use their majority power.
The bottom line is we won the election. We have an obligation to do what's right and act as quickly as possible.
He wants a vote before the presidential election, now just 43 days away. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has already promised the Senate will vote on the person nominated by President Trump. Republican Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski have already said they do not support moving ahead before the election. It would take two more GOP defections to block the nominee.